Reporting from Arkham Asylum, this is Gotham Rogues. In this video, we take a look at the comic book storyline Batman Mad. Believe it or not, but Mad is the first origin story that we ever got for the Mad Hatter in the comics. It was published across 6 issues of Batman the Dark Knight in 2013 and was written by Greg Hurwitz and penciled by Ethan Van Sciver and Szymon Kudranski. In it, we're shown Jervis Tetch's early years through a series of flashbacks. An odd-looking son of a hatter, Jervis was surprisingly quite a popular kid in school and was friends with his major crush, Alice. The two of them spent one perfect day together at a Alice in Wonderland themed theme park, a day that Jervis would cherish for the rest of his life. However, as the kid started to mature, Jervis was outgrown by all of his classmates, including Alice. Consulting with a doctor, he found out that this was due to a lack of testosterone and that Jervis would never get any taller. Because of this, the relationship that he sought with Alice never came to fruition as she rejected him. Desperate, Jervis started taking pills that was supposed to increase his height. However, they didn't work, and instead he suffered severe mental side effects. Eventually, Tetch completely lost his mind and became the Mad Hatter, obsessing over that perfect day he shared with Alice. In the present, we find the Mad Hatter hell-bent on recreating that day, setting up an elaborate scheme to find his cast for all the necessary roles. Jervis has established a chain of hat stores all over Gotham called Crazy Hats, with every single store item equipped with his signature mind control chip. This way, he's got thousands of Gothamites under his control, whom he can activate whenever he feels like it. However, there's one problem. His Alice has changed, and it's nothing like he remembered her, so the Hatter is forced to find a replacement. There are no suitable candidates though, until he comes upon Ukrainian pianist Natalia Trusevich, the girlfriend of Bruce Wayne's. So, like I said, this is the first time DC ever bothered to give Mad Hatter an actual origin story. Really strange, as the character have existed since 1948, yet it took until 2013 with the New 52 reboot for them to finally flesh out his backstory. Most of the other rogues have gotten their origins told and retold numerous times throughout the decades, but I guess the people at DC have never really valued old Jervis all that much. He did, however, get an origin all the way back in 1992 in Batman the Animated Series, and that's kind of become the definitive Mad Hatter story to me, so it's interesting to now have a different version. Lacking backstory is not Jervis' only problem though, he's also got a severe lack of good stories. In the animated series, he's portrayed as a bit of a creep, sure, but he's still sympathetic and most importantly, layered. In the comics, Jervis is mostly depicted as a two-dimensional psycho who constantly quotes Alice in Wonderland and possibly rapes little girls. He's an uninteresting, vile little bastard, a nasty walking gimmick. There's just nothing to him except for being an evil villain who needs to get punched in the face by Batman real bad. So does this comic change that? Does Mad, as it's called in its collected trade paperback form, flesh out Jervis Tetch and give him some actual motivations? Yes, but it's not perfect. No, far from it. So this comic establishes that what connects Jervis with the whole Alice in Wonderland theme are two things. His father used to be a hatter, hence the Mad Hatter, and of course that perfect day at the Alice theme park with a girl named Alice. Is this sufficient for Jervis to dedicate his entire life to being the Mad Hatter? No, I don't think so. It's pretty weak. I mean, what if he and Alice went to Disneyland? Would he have become Mickey Mouse? But to be fair, in the animated series, they didn't even bother to explain his obsession with Alice in Wonderland. He was already a hardcore fan or something when the episode began. At least here they try, even if it doesn't end up that great. So the reason why Jervis goes insane is because of the pills that he takes. I don't like that. Drugs turned him into the rogue that he is? No, that doesn't sit well with me at all. It should have been something that was within him, something which would have inevitably have taken over. This way, Jervis would have been a normal guy if he just hadn't taken those pills. I would have liked it a lot more if he was already a bit crazy, and then the medication drove him completely off the rails. His reason for taking the pills is weak too. He's short and wants to get taller, that's it. The doctor warns him of the dangerous side effects and highly advises against taking the drugs. Yet Jervis does it anyway, so it's his own fault too. His family is very loving and treats him good. There's no abuse going on. He's got lots of friends. He's not bullied or ignored in school. He's basically got a pretty sweet life. And then he himself fracks it up. Because of vanity. That's not very sympathetic. We're also never shown that Jervis was a scientist, and I don't imagine that he ever could have been since the pills drove him insane. So how he gets his mind control technology is beyond me. One thing I do kind of like though is his big scheme in the present day. At first it seems that he's gathering all these mind control people to just reenact scenes from Through the Looking Glass or something, which we've gotten before in the comics. That's very dull in my opinion and a really lame supervillain plot. But it turns out that he's doing all of this to reenact that perfect day of his from childhood. Crazy as he is, you almost feel a bit sorry for Jervis when he finally meets Alice again after so many years, only to find her be a complete disappointment. The sweet, beautiful, angelic Alice is a long gone memory, and it kind of makes sense what he does next, at least if you try to see it through his eyes. His perfect love had become a mockery, a perversion, and if you had gone back in time and shown Alice her future, maybe she would have agreed. We all have moments from our past that we'd like to relive, and people that we knew that we'd like to see again, the way they were then. But it's just a fantasy, an impossibility no matter how much we want it. Time moves on and there's just nothing we can do about it. That's why I think Jervis' plot is so compelling. He's stuck in a past that was much better, and that's tragic, yet charming, even though he is a sick, murderous scumbag. Batman also has a story going on in this comic, but I just don't buy into it at all. So Bruce is dating a woman named Natalia, and he'd been doing that since the previous arc in the Batman The Dark Knight title. For some reason, writer Greg Hurwitz plays her up as something special, and even has Bruce reveal to her that he's Batman. Then, in pure Batman Forever fashion, he starts talking about retiring as a superhero and settling down with Natalia. This comes completely out of nowhere and feels so forced and rushed. I just don't see what it is that makes Natalia different from any of the other numerous women he's dated, like Vicky Vale, Sylva St. Cloud, Julie Madison, Vesper Fairchild, Sasha Bordeaux, and so on. So it's just ridiculous that he'd give up everything just for her. Tweedledee and Tweedledum also appear in this story as Mad Hatter's main henchmen. There's not really much to them, they're just thugs and the Hatter's muscle. But I kind of like it when they work for him as opposed to being on their own. It makes more sense despite the fact that they did appear before Jervis in the comics. While this story is really dark for the most part, there are also a few fun moments, like the constant banter between Bruce and Alfred, and of course one scene where Hurwitz plays with the whole thing of Batman disappearing without a sound before Gordon's finished his last sentence. This time Gordon, for once, before turning around, expects for Batman to be gone, only to find out that he's still there. Doesn't really make sense, but it's hilarious. As for the artwork, I think it really sucks that Ethan Van Sciver didn't draw the entire thing. He did 4 out of 6 parts, and Kudransky did 2, so most of it is Van Sciver, but still. I'm not the biggest fan of Sciver, but there is something about his artwork. It's very cinematic. There are several big action scenes in this book that feel like something out of the Nolan or Batfleck movies, and Sciver portrays them beautifully. He's certainly a master at his craft, and does great angles and layouts. It never feels cramped or awkwardly composed, and there are no panels by him where you can't see what's going on. With Kudransky, it's the opposite. He frequently draws his characters in odd poses, so you don't really know what the hell they're doing. Like this panel, what's happening there? Did the Mad Hatter's head explode? And this, what is this? Is Alfred doing a little dance while holding a giant banana? It's made further difficult to tell because Kudransky uses so much shading, he just covers everything in it. Half the time you can't see the characters' faces because they're completely cloaked in shadows. Anyway, in conclusion, Mad is an attempt at finally giving the Mad Hatter a proper origin story in the comics. It's not great, but not completely terrible either. I still prefer the animated series episode Mad as a Hatter as my definitive Hatter origin. I don't recommend this comic to casual Batman readers. No, there's plenty of other better stories to get instead, but if you're a big Hatter fan, then you gotta pick this up if you haven't already. It's not great, but it's nice to see DC at least try giving Jervis Tetch his moment in the spotlight. So there you have it, that's Batman Mad. Remember, Arkham Asylum awaits you in the next video.